some people like, oh, that must have happened overnight. You could say this about your business. That must have been the longest night I ever had. This is not rocket science, and that's what I think people want to hear, some magic bullet. There isn't. And a lot of time when I'm giving my talk, I'm like, guys, I just explained all this stuff, and clearly, like, what I'm telling you here is work.
Right.
You know, you got to be willing to do the work, and if you don't want it enough, then you better change. You're going to just be unfulfilled for the rest of your life.
Welcome back to the What's More podcast. I'm your host, Quinton Harris. And today we are joined with an amazing guest. I'm so excited to have her on the show today. You know, we just got a chance to spend a little time driving from the airport back over here, listening a little bit about the story. I'm super excited to share it. But let me tell you a little bit about our guest before we get started today. Our guest today is Janine Stange, a motivational speaker, singer, and on-air personality, best known for her historic journey to sing the Star-Spangled Banner in all 50 states, a mission she embarked on to honor our brave. Her story has been featured on every major television network and is the subject to a documentary series, National Anthem Girl, streaming on Amazon Prime and Apple TV. I'm so excited to have you on the show today, Janine.
I'm excited
Thanks
to
for
be
being
here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, when I was asking about this in the car on the ride over here, 50 states is a lot. But when you think about singing the national anthem, like I get sweaty thinking about trying to think of all the words of the national anthem, much less sing the national anthem. You know, Charlie, my producer, he's a musician. He even says it's the hardest song to sing, dude. Like, you have to understand, it's so hard to sing. So
that's why I picked it. That's why I picked it.
So tell us, why did you pick that? What was the motivation behind this?
There was a moment.
Okay.
So back when I was living in Los Angeles, I was pursuing a music career, and the music industry, as people that are in it know, it's not what it used to be. And I remember there was this moment that it was a paradigm shift for me. See, I had been, to go deep really quick, if you're all right with that.
Yeah.
I was out in LA, and my mom, we got word that I got the phone call, and usually life changes in that instant. And I found out that she had breast cancer and stage 4. So I moved back. I left everything, although, it was, I didn't know how long this was going to be, but I was like, okay, I'm just going to be by her side. It ended up being for 9 months I was with her. And I watched her go through some paradigm shifts in her own life, things that she had procrastinated on. And then she would, kind of like think about it. And I remember one time we were sitting in the living room as after a particularly tough day of chemo. And, it's our green leather couch, and we're watching the Food Network, which never made sense to me because she really couldn't keep anything down. But she loved watching that show, Chopped. And I have since figured out, I think she had a crush on Bobby Flay. That's why she was able to overcome.
Bobby the chef.
Yes.
Okay.
But anyhow, during a commercial break, I'll never forget it, she turned to me and she said, whenever we went to a nice restaurant and there was a lobster special, I'd always want to order it, but I'd always say, when there's a special enough occasion, then I'll order the lobster. And unfortunately, she passed a couple of months after that, and it resonated with me like, wow, like how many of us have lobsters in our own life? Now, something I used to always say, which I call when-then statements, is I used to say, when I make it big, then I'll give back.
Right.
It seems nice and noble, but I always say, if you could put me on mute, which you've been with me now for the past hour,
hour and a half.
It's pretty much impossible, I think, at this point.
No, I love it. It's great.
But I would always say that, and it sounds noble, but at the end of the day, we many times are putting off the very thing that we should be focusing on. Now, for me, it was when I make it big, then I'll give back. Well, when my mom passed and I was there in the aftermath, I started to think, like, what in the world can I do that would be giving back, that would be natural for me? You never want to just do something just because, like, oh, yeah, you know what, that's what everybody else is doing. That's the path I should. So I just was, like, thinking one day, like, I sang that song in a few states, and I started to think, I wonder if anybody ever sang it in every state. So I did what I always say, what we all do when we want to do major research. I Googled.
Right, and Dr. Googled it.
Yes, and you know what? I found out nobody did it ever. This wasn't something anybody did. So the reason why I picked that song was it was something that I could do. First of all, I felt like I was using my voice in a way in which it wasn't a self-point. It was to honor our nation's heroes. It was just a simple way to allow people the opportunity to sing along or to relive certain moments in their own service when they were there, and allow that moment for everybody to kind of feel united under the fact that they had appreciation for their service. Other people had appreciation for their service, so they were just reliving that. So for me, it was also I'm not in the industry. This is me on a field with a microphone, sometimes no microphone, but it was the ability for me to just say, you know what, I'm going to use what I believe God gave me to sing and to lead people in that song. And that was why I picked that to do. And it was never knew what would unfold, and the adventure and also the lessons that I would learn from that. So it was me on a trajectory that I was thick-headed. I am pursuing a career in music, saying I'm going to give back and be philanthropic when I make it big. Life never goes the way you think it does, but at least you have some semblance of a concept. And then I think for me, and this is something I tell people too, is you don't need to wait for that moment where it's like your friend Brian Sexton who had the pliers go through you don't have to wait for that moment. You could actually say, well, what is it that I can actually do? And that, that's my very long and winding story of how that happened.
No, I love it. And I love the energy, and I can just totally feel the sincerity coming out, because you can tell how much your mom meant to you and how much those 9 months spending that time. I saw you get a little choked up there as you were talking about that. And, I think that it's interesting, because when you think of battles like that, I immediately went back to my own grandmother. We all have someone in our lives that's been touched by that. Yeah. And I know that paradigm you were talking about. I too remember a green couch in our house. Wow. And I remember moments. Are we
related?
Yeah. And I was I remember those moments. So when you said that, I didn't have a shift where I thought I had to go do something to that magnitude, but I remember there was a paradigm moment in my life that. And it's interesting how all of us are impacted by that. So I appreciate you sharing that with us.
And I feel it's important to always share those things, because it allows people that moment to interface, because I'm also aware when I speak about these things that they're not sitting there. Maybe some people are like, oh, wow, what a story. But most of the time, people are sitting there saying, what am I going to do when this happens to me?
Right.
Or how am I going to handle whatever it is? So it's almost better to say interface with these things now, rather than just be blindsided by things, or blindsided by the fact that you put off so many things in your life that now you can't, you're sitting there saying, why did I wait? What was the point?
Yeah. Why wait so long?
Yeah.
Right. What was the point?
Yeah.
And the thing about this is, I love that you didn't just take to the stage and go, you know what? No one's ever done this. I'm Guinness Book of World Records. That's what it's about. It wasn't about that. I
didn't want that kind of. People actually told me to do that. I was I didn't do it for a record. Go ahead.
And I love the fact that you were doing it to honor our brave, to honor the people that have served and currently serving. It's very important. And I think that means a lot to many people in many different ways, right?
Yeah.
And so you go to all 50 states, right? Mm-hmm. Now, I imagine, if I had to guess, not all places you sang the national anthem were created equally or looked or felt the same.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So tell us about so let's leave with the easiest question. What was the most overwhelming place you sang the national anthem?
One of the most unexpected places.
Okay, let's go with that.
So I remember I flew into Spokane, Washington. I just created a city.
Yes, okay.
And I was exhausted. I was about a little halfway through. And mind you, people, and we talked about this in the car, people always want to hear about the flash, and when every news outlet was trying to get in touch with me, and it was the moments that were very different that really struck me the most. And I was exhausted. I had flown into Washington and had to drive through Coeur d'Alene and then to a little town called Wallace, Idaho.
Okay.
And I was not expecting, even just the way it came about, it was because I was on the news and some man connected with me and said, I would love for you to come and sing. If you haven't checked off Idaho yet, come and sing at Wallace, Idaho, where we have the center of the universe. And that just on itself, you read that and you're all right, yes, I'm sure you do. But drove in, and I remember he said, when you get here, you'll see me, I'm in a yellow ATV. Which again, if you said to me, when you get to Jacksonville, you'll see me, it's how, right?
Yeah,
but
right.
This is because there's literally two roads. But anyhow, it became such an interesting unfolding of events. He took me on the zip-lining mountain, and I zip-lined.
Okay.
Who does that?
On the way to go sing the anthem.
Yeah, on the way LA to go sing the anthem. And then he dropped me off. So I got to meet him and his wife and all these people that were there on this tour. And then he's like, okay, be back. We'll let you know when it's time for you to come and sing. We'll let you. And I'm like, well, how are you going to let me know? Well, I didn't know this, but where I was staying, I could literally look down from the window and they were all like there. So they were assembling. So there were people polishing the manhole cover.
Okay.
The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle style center of the universe. They were polishing it. And then there was about 800 people in that town and they all showed up.
Wow.
To sing with me. Like, I'm like, what in the world? Like, yes, I go and sing at sporting events. They're not showing up because I'm there. It's because their team is there, right? For this, they came because there was this crazy girl who said she was singing the anthem in all 50 states and they wanted to be part of it. And I just remember singing. It was one of the first times that I could hear everyone else singing. And that was just a moment.
Oh, that's...
After I finished that, they gave me this coin that was salvaged from the Great Fire of 1915. And I mean, like all these things that just happened. And it was a moment for me to remember. There isn't the tip of the iceberg is what everybody sees, but it's in some of those like most daunting, exhausting moments is a lot of times where you see some of the most hopeful and some of the most inspiring things. And they don't know, I told them a million times, but like it's been years now, but they were my breath of fresh air. They were that encouragement to keep going because it was like, what am I even doing? What am I doing?
And at that point, where were you in like your city count? Your state count?
I think I was in the early 30s.
Wow.
And so you reach a tipping point too. In the beginning, it takes a while to get momentum and you're cold calling, very much like probably people listening to this podcast and mortgages and real estate. Like if you're not out there cold calling, no one was handing me events and saying, here you go, until, there was that national news moment where everybody wanted me to do stuff. But in the beginning, it's just you and your laptop and you got to remember why you're doing what you're doing,
So what I heard there was, not so much it's the process. And I heard perseverance and I heard, just wasn't really up for the task. And then all of a sudden you go after it and it's this unexpected just overwhelming moment that just leads to drive you into the next 3, 4, 5 states to go figure out how to get it done.
Yeah.
And I love that.
And at the same time, you have to, I always say this, if you don't have skin in the game, you are not going to fight tooth and nail to get it done. And I felt like this was this mission I was on. It was something that I was doing. I believed in it. I did not know. I mean, these are things that just occur. Like I was going kind of like, all right, as I have enough money, I'm going to hit different states. And then I realized that the National Anthem was turning 200. Let's see, I found that out in January and I was like, okay, that I have until September to get so now, like what I learned about setting goals and different things like that is you also need to have some type of time frame that people will hold you to. So the more interviews that I did on TV and radio, like telling people, I mean, it was just like, okay, like there is nothing that's going to stop me. If I had to hitchhike, I would have. But there were times when it was just when you're by yourself that you have to remember your why, your mission, your reason. And it is important to take moments during those journeys to kind of regroup and recalibrate because otherwise you just get lost. And a lot of people set goals and they don't reach them. And a lot of times I believe it has to do with the fact that they don't line up with their core values. We don't take the time to say, what is it that makes me tick? We don't do that. We watch what everybody else tells us that makes them tick, and we follow their Instagram stories, but we don't follow ours. And why is that? You wonder, like, what is it? Well, it's because it's a lot of introspection. It's a lot of places that you have to go that are not comfortable for you because you may have to change. You may have to adjust.
Well said.
So,
we had a guy on the podcast, a dear friend of mine, Dr. Steve Tufts, and he came in and said the same thing. He said, listen, putting yourself out there, committing to goals, putting a time frame on it, right? He goes, most people treat goals like a checklist, like a New Year's resolution. They just list things they want to do, but there's no path to get there.
No.
And there's no time. Like I want to lose weight, but they don't talk about how much weight they want to lose. Then they don't break down how they're going to do it. Right. They don't. So because of that, they fall short.
Yes.
And to your point, you went out there, you committed yourself, you started doing interviews, you put timelines on yourself, you put commitments, and you said, I'm accountable. Now, I'm accountable because I've said this, I have to do it.
And this is the important thing is like you set the big goal, but then it's the minutia, and then I think what works really well for me to kind of explain the nature of figuring out how to do things is because for me, it was bite-sized pieces. It was 50 states. It was one state at a time, and it was mundane and in some fun things. But, you know, you're on stage for 90 seconds, and the rest of it is just like, whoa, you know. But it is developing the habits, showing up every time you have to be ready to do it. Now, if I never, you know, I remember one time I was doing this interview for this guy, and I was like, you know what? I was like, if you called me at 2:30 in the morning to sing the national anthem, I could do it. Well, little did I know, a little bit after I finished all 50 states, I stuck myself in another situation because some lacrosse event called Shootout for Soldiers said to me, hey, we want you to sing. We're doing this game that's going to last for 24 hours. It's like a different game every hour.
Wow.
And there I am like, yeah, I'll do it. But hey, let me ask you a question. What if I sang before every game? So I sang the anthem 24 times in 24 hours. No one's ever done that before either. So we raised money for charity to do that.
Wow.
But I had the opportunity to prove that I was able to I was ready at all times. And I think that's the other thing. I think people think I'll get ready when I get called. That's not how it goes. We like to think it will. But again, it's the consistency in saying, I don't need to warm up. Right. I'm ready to go. I am ready, and I'm going to actually also create the path. You know, I was like, why did I come on? I mean, it was like, and you could watch my hair. This is funny. We're talking about humidity, right? So like my hair was straight, but by the 24th performance, like you could watch the hair like
go in different directions.
Oh, it was just crazy. It was a lot of fun.
I mean, that sounds, I couldn't imagine 24 hours of like every hour on the hour getting prepared, making, you know, the opportunity to sing that. You know, I got a guy in my office, he says this all the time, and I wish I could steal it from him and make it mine, but he's like, I'm always like, hey, you ready? He's like, man, I don't need to get ready. I stay ready. And I'm like, okay, fair enough. Hats off to you on that one. But sounds like kind of where you're at there. Stay ready. In
any career, you have to be ready. Otherwise, people will find somebody else instantaneously. You know, it's like the sense of urgency. If somebody calls you, like I do that now with other people. It's like, okay, I just called you. I know my phone is here. I know your phone is there. It's right. Like, unless you're on a flight where you can't talk, it's sense of urgency, and it's the ability to creatively say, okay, we've got this, we've got a solution, or, you know, helping yourself figure out something that works with you for your core values.
Yeah, no. And I love this. And something you said earlier that I just want to kind of go back in and unpack that I don't think the audience may have caught on to was you self-financed this journey. You weren't sponsored. You didn't have this, you know, you didn't have people funding this for you, because I heard you say I had to book flights, I had to make travel. So yeah, you did this all on your own dime. I didn't
know how it was going to happen. I just knew that I was going to do it. And again, that's where you then break everything down and you're like, okay, well, now I had some Sky Miles. Okay. You know, thanks to Delta, I would also get a lot of. I know this sounds crazy. I wouldn't have had it any other way. Like I had some flight attendants would be like, you know, do you need any more snacks? I'm like, can I have a couple more? Because that's what like would become dinner for me.
Oh, wow.
I was able to get through all 50 states, and I am very grateful for the fact that a woman, her name is Heather Nauert. She used to be on Fox and Friends, and she saw me, the power of social media. She had sent me a DM and said, I just saw what you were doing. You know, are you taking pictures of where you're going? I'm like, pictures? I've got a
docuseries.
Yeah. So she had me on, and that was at state 27. And I put together, I remember 6 a.m., like I launched the Indiegogo, I think it was, or the crowdfunding was just beginning. And I launched it, and I was like, okay, God, like, please help me. And there were enough people. I raised enough money. And again, you know, I didn't have corporate I didn't have any of that stuff. Mm-hmm. And I will say this, a lot of times people are always waiting for that dream scenario. It was not a dream scenario. I was calling places and just saying like, hey, like, what? You want to come to Alaska? Like, you know, we don't pay you. That's the other thing. People probably thought I was getting paid. I didn't care about that. But it was very much me trusting. And I think that's the other thing is you learn, you know, the fears and the doubts of any type of goal you set, they're never going to go away. The important thing to do is continue to move in spite of it. And also, I tell people, plan to have the LW, which is the last word, to those chirpy fears and doubts that go on, like, no. Your dad never did it, you're never going to do it. Or you know what, if you even try to do this, everybody's going to be talking about you. You do know that because you're not really smart enough, or fill in the blank of whatever it is, that playlist that immediately launches. I always tell people, what you need to do is know that this is how this goes in this constant scenario. You can continue to go around and around the mountain, or you can say, you know what, I know what's going to happen whenever I try to exit a comfort zone. So I've got the response.
Yeah.
And then, okay, you know what? Quinton, of course, Quinton, you're going to feel nervous about launching this podcast. I mean, stay in your lane. What are you doing? And then you start to, hold on a second. Of course, you're going to be nervous about that, but that's normal, right? How many other hard things have you done in life? And you literally kind of get on your level as if you were a 5-year-old kid scared to get up at bat. And you have that conversation. It's like a tool, like where you literally are saying, okay, that's fine. And then all of a sudden, it's amazing how your blood pressure goes down. You calm down and you're like, all right, you know what? That's okay. One foot in front of the other.
Absolutely. So true. The last words are like limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
Just remove them from yourselves. Yeah. And I love it because it's the great thing about hearing people that have overcome, some sort of, how can I say it, challenge, and they've had success on the other side is I love hearing like the motivation behind it. And I love hearing things like, I call them LW's last words, right? I love the fact that your acronyms, and I've heard them from so many different people, but people that endure a lot to get to a certain place. They've all have these notes, these tidbits, these tea leaves of success, which is why I love having people on this show, because you get to hear the different ones. And sometimes not all of them resonate. But by the time you hear a lot of them, they all start to come together.
You know what? It's funny you say that because I tell people all the time, like, I speak at all these different events, all different industries. And, then there's like, they just had like a guy who won the Super Bowl, and then there's, some big finance guy or whatever. And then there's me, this girl from Long Island who's got a semi-thick accent whenever she gets going, who now is going to talk about what? You grew up working in your parents' bagel shop. You wanted to be a singer. Then your mom passed away and you decide to change the trajectory because you wanted to find, and I say, you know what? Like all of us have Navy SEALs, and I listen to, friends who are speakers, and I'm like, wow, we kind of say the same thing, but like it's a matter of who that person in the audience is gonna
100%.
Receive it from.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's me. I don't know if it was the accent.
No. Sometimes, I mean, it all starts, like you said, you hear enough of it, it resonates, and everybody's getting a piece of it at some point, which I love, and I think it's wonderful. Yeah. So as you're traveling around, I got to ask this question because I meant to ask it on the way over here, but I'm glad I'm waiting to do it live here. So I imagine there were some places you went into that were like, okay, I didn't see that coming. Like when you went to perform, like what was the most like, I'm sure there was more than one, but if you had to pick out one that just stood out and you're like, okay, we're making this docuseries, this has to be on here. Like this moment has to be on this movie because, well, no one's going to believe it.
Yeah. Let me think about that. There were some moments where I think I was just like, what am I doing? Like, there was one time where I remember I showed up. I'm not going to name the state or anything like that, but I just didn't feel very safe.
Okay.
And I remember I never thought of this. I think I only knew this because you see it in the movies where you put the chair up against
under the door, under the doorknob.
And I was like, oh my gosh. There was another moment that came out of nowhere, and this was actually a fun moment. And that was the fact that I was sitting on a flight. This is why I always love talking to people wherever I go, because this gentleman who was sitting next to me, he's like, why are you headed to Billings? Because I was out in Montana, and I was like, I'm singing the national anthem in all 50 states. And he starts showing me these pictures on his laptop. He had these planes, these T-34 planes, he collected them. And he's like, I do the flyover for the Red Lodge Rodeo. I was like, that's what Red Lodge Parade. And I said, well, I'm singing for the rodeo. It happened to be on the 4th of July. He invites me to be, he's like, do you want to come on the flyover? So I remember I said, I better call somebody to say that I'm going to, like my family, like let them know I'm about to be. So he said, meet me, before you have to sing, meet me at the hangar, and I did. And he took me up. We went up in military formation. Like we after we did the flyover, we banked over the Beartooth Mountains.
Wow!
I mean, it was just. I mean, on the 4th of July, you're getting to do all this stuff. And I remember he said we did 2 rolls, which I was trying to film with my iPhone, but I'm going to say that it's centrifugal or centripetal force, whichever one stopped my iPhone from filming, so you could see the upside down part, but you don't get to see the whole thing. And
you weren't expecting that.
I was not expecting that. I wanted everybody to be able to see the whole thing. And then I remember he then asked me, he's like, do you want to fly a little? And I just kind of thought he meant like, you want to keep going? And I was like, yeah, okay. He's like, okay. And he took his hands off, and I was like, okay, I totally thought I trusted this guy. Like, and he just was like, there was like, so I had the controls. He had the, he let me have them. And I just remember all I was doing was just going on these like deep spirals and like very like not straight. And finally I said, can you straighten me out? And he's like, I didn't know when you were going to ask me to fix this, but yes. Okay. Which was hilarious. And then I was just like, all right. And then I started to think I have one shirt to wear. And I started cause I was looking through my iPhone and you will get nauseous if you can't, you're seeing like all these different. So he's like, I stopped talking. And that's when he realized, he's like, are you feeling nauseous? I'm like, yeah. Like, I'm glad because now I'm like, I don't want to christen his plane and I can't sing with anything on the shirt. I have nothing else. And he's like, that's okay. And we took the top off of the plane so that I got more air. And then within like 60, he's like, we see the runway. We'll be there in 60 seconds. And I was like, 59, 58, please, dear God, can't throw up on this. But I didn't. But that was something that I didn't expect was going to happen.
Yeah.
And that was like so much fun. And you're just like, again, like, this is where I tell people, like, you want to stay safe, but there's so much more when you have no idea. And the most adventure comes when you're like, you've got this idea, it leads you on this adventure, and sometimes it's hard, and other times you're just like, man, I can't wait to tell everybody. I remember I texted my brother, I'm like, hey, I'm taking off, and I took a picture of where, and they're like, what are you doing? I was like, don't worry about it. If he wants to hurt me, he's gonna have to hurt himself.
This is in my favor here. I feel comfortable, right? Yeah. This guy seems like he's good. But, it's just one of those things where you connect with people. And then not only that, like everything you want is on the other side of fear. I can go on for countless stories about like being fearful of something and then just saying, you know what, screw it, I'm going to do it. And how it turns out to the benefit of me for doing that. And, something I try to embark upon my kids all the time. Don't be fearful, play fearless, be cautious, but play fearless and have fun.
And it's important to be keen on why you're feeling that resistance. Mm-hmm. There's like Stephen Pressfield, The War of Art. I always tell people about this book. I remember reading it. It's just like on the other side of all of these types, there's a reason why you need to really say, well, why am I feeling this way? Why is there this big, no, don't run towards that? Keeping in mind that it isn't about seeing, like you see where you have to go, but you're never going to take this big, huge leap to get there. And some people are like, oh, that must have happened overnight. You could say this about your business. That must have been the longest night I ever had. Because it takes that whole thing of putting down the roots. This is not rocket science, and that's what I think people want to hear, some silver or magic bullet, whatever the right word is. There isn't. And right. A lot of time when I'm giving my talk, I'm like, guys, I just explained all this stuff, and clearly, like what I'm telling you here is it's work.
Right.
You got to be willing to do the work, and if you don't want it enough, then you better change. You're going to just be unfulfilled for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Figure out what it is that makes you tick.
Yeah, no, I love it. And you tell younger generations that, and I'm not picking on younger generations when I say this, but I say it all the time because, when I'm interviewing someone and, for a job, it never fails, depending on the age group of that person. The younger they are, the quicker they want to be the CEO, which I love the passion, I love the desire, but there's this timeline it takes to get there. We talked a little bit about this. Everybody sees where you are now, not all this struggle and the things you had to overcome to get there, which is, why I love stories. I love hearing people's stories because I love hearing what they had to go through, endure, and challenges they overcome. It's just, it's what I think helps drive me to be better and also other people to be better as well. So it's good to hear, and as we kind of go into this next chapter of the podcast, I love the fact that you talk about overcoming challenges through disruption.
Yeah.
And you talk about momentum mindset through disruption. Now, we are living in a very disruptive world right now, whether it's social media, whether it's the regular media. I mean, heck, election year, the economy. I mean, it's a disruptive environment right now. So I know you're getting ready to go speak to a group of real estate agents. And I love speaking. And I know they're going through some disruption, right?
A little bit.
Just a little bit right now. Just a little bit. So, but let's talk about that mindset. Mindset through disruption. How to be successful with the positive mindset through disruption. Walk us through that.
Well, the title of my keynote is Choose to Rise.
Okay.
5 keys to maintain balance and ignite momentum. Because what I believe is it is a choice, but it is work to fulfill that choice, to actually move through that. Mm-hmm. When you have a tough day, or maybe it's this big triumph, or it's a big fall on your face failure, there's things that sometimes I think we leave out, and I think it's just because we live, as you mentioned, like this era of social media where even after my mom passed away, I remember I felt like there was a day, okay? I can't tell you literally if it was for 1 hour or 10 hours. Mm-hmm. it was after everything had unfolded, but you're on an adrenaline rush taking care of somebody. And maybe some people that are listening, they can relate to this. You're a caretaker, so you're just like constantly like going and going. And then all of a sudden it's like, poof. And I just remember I sat up in my bed. I was living in Los Angeles, and I remember I didn't move. I was stuck. I was staring at the wall in front of me. It was a white wall. And I wasn't seeing the wall. What I was seeing was all the things that actually had unfolded over the past couple of months, and even more, memories, different things.
Almost like a playback.
Yes. It was like they say, like, you see all these different things. And I saw a lot of the things that I regretted, like things that you do as a kid. Like, yeah, had I known, my mom would be 59 and not be here anymore, you would do things a little differently. And then I started also think about the things that she wouldn't be with us for, so I thought of the things that she was with us for, and then started to think of like, oh my gosh, like we really could use her for a lot of these things. And even though I was sitting in a bed, I might as well have been standing at a fork in the road. It was that moment I talked about earlier, because I felt like, and I know this because other things in my life, and you could probably say the thing, it's like when you're in the aftermath of something, it's like you automatically, like instantaneously feeling the pressure. How are you going to react to that? How are you going to handle it? What are you going to say? How are you going to tell people, like, what's your next move? And you just feel all that stuff. And I think the most important thing to remember in those moments is, I call it DROPP, D-R-O-P-P.
Okay.
Here we go. This is not a magic bullet, though. This is just the reality. Is the first thing I think that is important after a situation maybe where you had expectations that weren't met or whatever it is like decompress. Actually give yourself some space between that situation and, yourself. It's like sometimes if you have to write an email and you're like, oh my gosh, and you keep writing it and you're just not doing well, sometimes the best thing to do is get up, go do something else.
Couldn't agree more.
I can't tell you how many times, and you're saying that you can agree, it's like I get the whole thing.
Yep.
Like, it's like it's almost downloads. I'm like, I'm glad I got up. Now, a lot of times if you're a tenacious person, which you are, and a lot of people probably listening are the same mind, it's like, no, stay there until it's done. But sometimes it's like the counterintuitive way to do, just get up and decompress. And then the next thing to do is reconcile. Reconcile with what actually occurred, not living in the fantasy, like in the denial, or hoping like, oh yeah, it's just something magical is going to happen. That's just not the case. So the quicker we're able to reconcile and be realistic about it, the better we are at then we're at a different perspective, and you could observe. You could actually see, well, a little bit further down the road, you could see a little bit in the past, like what exactly is the stuff that I need to do? And then from that point, you're able to prepare and plan. And I always say the other thing is promise. So there's an extra P, because you want to make yourself accountable. But a lot of times what we do is we just want to skip, and then that choice to rise is not really actually able to incubate. And we just run into the next thing. And a lot of times it's emotion that we're running from, because we don't put space between it. We just push it down and keep going. And, it's going to come out one way or another.
Yeah, and it's usually volatile and not good.
Yeah.
Sometimes it involves liquid courage. You just don't know, but it comes out and it's not good.
Right. So we're dealing with stuff and walking wounded rather than saying, and I think this is important too, it's not for you. I think once you latch on to something that's bigger than yourself, it gives you the reason, the wherewithal to say, hold on a second, there are people depending on me. There's a story that I have to tell that I need to make sure I'm showing up. Because I believe if you tell yourself, like if you have that courage to say, you know what, hold on a second, I know I'm going to fall flat on my face again. I mean, this is not like the cure-all for everything isn't, all right, now that I ran into major obstacles, I can now fix it all the time. It's going to be different all the time. So you're going to show up for yourself. You're going to commit to showing up for yourself. Who else will if you won't?
Ooh, I love that one. I love it. If you don't believe in yourself, no one else will.
No,
we talk about that all the time on here.
No, and here's the other thing is there's a difference between being stuck and being still. If you're stuck, you're hanging on to your fears and your doubts, and you're this rigid person, and you may not know it, but everybody else does. You're just that person that, nope, this is why I can't do it. You're the pessimist. You're the person that's just always finding the negative side of it. But if you're still, that's like kind of like, think about like a Navy SEAL, like perched like as a, I don't know why I keep using it, but it's like you're still, but you've got a plan. You're able to see things. You have a perspective. You're able to also be dynamic. You can still move in that. So being still and being stuck are two different animals. And a lot of times we're scared of being still. That's why we get stuck in the industry. How everything in the real estate world is just feels like, what is going on? I think the people that want to hang on to what it used to be and that old model or whatever, however they used to do things, they're not going to change. Well, things are going to continue to move anyway. Just because we had a personal tragedy or a personal upending of our own career, the world still still spins. Yeah. It doesn't stop going, what happened with that, the real estate.
Yeah, and going back to what you said with the reconcile, reconciling what's going on in your industry and realizing that hoping it'll get better, hope's not a strategy.
No.
It's not one at all.
No.
And, so to your point, you got to accept it, you got to be prepared to move on.
And the people that are prepared, look, it's like what Mr. Rogers, look for the helpers. Well, putting systems and structure in place isn't for you to be able to, sure, provide for yourself, but you can also help others. And isn't that what life is all about? Why do we have these gifts and talents? Why did we have this certain subset of even experiences in our life if it isn't to help others? You're here on a podcast helping other people share their stories. You're also in your other selling mortgages and employing other people to be able to do that. What is life if you can't be a stepping or a ladder or whatever you call it for other people?
Right. No, I mean, I got to imagine that when someone comes up to you and was like, oh, that just meant so much to me that you did that. Like when those 800 people came, to the center of the universe and supported you, I can't imagine how that felt. Because when people just put something simple online, like, hey, great episode, I'm so glad you did that, which I'm sure we're going to get hundreds of comments on this one. But it makes you feel like, oh, wow, thank you. Sometimes I'm sure it was a lonely echo chamber at first when you were doing this, and then all the feedback pours in. You're like, now it's worth it. Now I know.
And I guess the other part of that is when people hinge too much on. I'm not discounting at all what you're saying. What I'm saying is sometimes people are all seeking the accolades of it.
Yep, the reaffirmation. Yep.
But the most important thing is exactly what you're saying. When the craziness and the busyness and the delays on flights and when you have that person come up to you, after coming off the stage speaking and you're just listening to their story and it's humbling. And I say that, a lot of people love to say that, but it's true because you're like, holy macaroni, this is why I do what I do. And it hits you. I got to tell this story about my mom, not it's therapeutic for me, not that, but because somebody needed to hear it. And you cannot discount the importance and the gravity that there is in knowing that you're at that place for them.
Yeah.
That's just amazing, to be able to do that. But it wouldn't happen if you're like, wait, you know what? I'm going to sit back and hope other people see that I can, speak or see that I have this podcast. No, you gotta go out there and do it. And sometimes the best way to do it is because it's not for me.
Yeah.
And you got to remember that. Remember your motivation mindset. Remember your motive, because when the lights in this nice studio go off and you're back to, whatever it is that you're doing and dealing with some people, I always like to use this phrase. It's a friend of mine. I heard it first from him. He was a former Navy SEAL commander. His name is Rourke Denver, and he always says, calm is contagious.
Ooh.
And that's what they tell all the SEALs when they're training is calm is contagious.
Okay.
You have the opportunity to do one of two things when you are dealing with the environment, the ever-changing world of real estate and mortgages, whatever it is who are you? Your through line, it's not about what you do. It's about who you are and the values that you bring to the table. You are who you are. In every instance, that's why you're successful, because you're not changing according to, I'm going to handle it this way or whatever. And the point about calm being contagious is that when everything is going all over the place, you've already taken the time to put systems and structure in place so you know how to react to it. And you're not going to just be dictated to on how you're going to oh my gosh, everything's crazy, let's all just freak out. Nope. The calm and methodical person is who everybody looks to. And I just always say, the other side of it is if, calm is contagious, crazy.
Yeah.
We know that's contagious too. So it's a matter of taking that breath, taking that pause, taking the time to decompress and say, wait a second, who am I? Remember that, because you're not going to be able to be anybody else, even though you could try. And then you take your steps, carve the path.
No, that's fantastic. I love that. And I got to ask, between the Navy SEALs and your mom, I sense there's a high level of influence amongst, your career with them.
Yeah.
Is there another person or another thing that influenced your process of doing what you've done throughout your career?
So, I talk about this. There's a guy, his name was Mr. Valentine. And when I was in high school, I was a freshman, he gave this talk, and you have those assemblies, and I'll never forget it. He said this to the entire school, but to me, it felt like I was the only person he was talking to. And he said, within you is the ability to do exploits, something uncommon with your life. And he said, you don't have these gifts and talents, the ability to do these exploits because of yourself. You have them because the world needs them. And then he challenged us. He said, I want you to go home and write down those uncommon things that you will do with your life. Now, I've never told him how much that impacted me. I talk about Mr. Valentine every keynote I give because it changed the way I thought, because it made me make decisions saying, I committed. First of all, he made you use other senses, right? Like you hear it, and then like I wrote it down, and there's something to say about the word integrity and how if you continually lie to yourself and say, I'm going to do this, and you never do it, even your whole body is going to be like, she's lying. I'm going to get up tomorrow morning early and work out. Okay. Have fun with that. Don't hold your breath. So him saying that to me, and well, to everybody, but I took it personally. I remember I wrote down what I would do. And it was for the first time I ever said that I was going to sing and I was going to use the platform to help others. Now, that's also where the when then statement came in, where I said, I'm going to make it big, then I'm going to give back. What I then started to realize by, having that influence where it was at that moment is that I was always thinking, no, I'm different. I identified with that moment, and I was like, no, I'm not going to make that choice. I'm not going to get caught up in running around all these other things. I would be in my basement. I was learning classical music at the time and singing nonstop to the point where my brother would call downstairs, like shut up, but I felt like, no, I have to do what people that are successful do. And that is not always hanging out with everybody and, sitting around. I didn't have Instagram at the time, but scrolling on Instagram.
Yeah. No, I mean,
that was another guy that had influence.
That's awesome. And I always ask that question because, you just never know where this, for our audience, you just never know where that moment's going to come from. Right. And so yours was at a high school assembly, it's just like, you just never, ever know. And I think that's always relevant. We can all go back and talk about people. I had a professor in college that was super influential. And I mean, it seems like there's these paradigm moments, right? That we talked about earlier there. And there's always seems to be a family member, a colleague, or maybe a mentor, and then a teacher. It always seems to be in those levels,
Yes.
And sometimes it's all three, sometimes it's just one.
And I think the other part of it is that then you get to be that person for other people.
Yeah.
I mean, how amazing is that? It's just like that whole thing where you pay it forward, knowing that maybe something I said or it's something you say on this podcast is going to click with somebody. And you may never know that.
Yeah.
But you can't do it by sitting in a comfort zone.
Yeah. No, I love it. I love that. I say that all the time, especially to my kids, get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's tougher for a teenager to realize that than it is an adult. And sometimes it's hard for an adult to realize that.
Yeah. It's all different categories.
All different categories. Yeah. So I love the energy. I love the message. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And guys, if you haven't got a chance, check out the National Anthem Girl streaming on Apple TV and on Amazon. Check it out.
Movie.
We watched part of it the way today. It was super, super cool. There were some things on there. I was like, I was not expecting to see that. So don't want to ruin it for our audience, but take a look, watch it. Yep. It was great done. And it was also, did you produce it? Were you part of the production? No, you do the narrating.
Yes, I
do.
You
do narrate. Okay,
I knew I was going to.
I saw that, but I thought maybe you might have produced it.
No, Kelly's Filmworks. They're out of Kentucky. They actually became good friends of mine. And the story of how they did it was they saw me on the news and they contacted me and said, if you haven't sung in Kentucky yet, come and sing for the Louisville Bats. I did. And
super cool.
They filmed me, and then they came to Nashville to film me for the 50th state. And then 2 years later, they're like, hey, has anybody asked to do a documentary on your story? And I was like, who would want to do that? And then they said, well, we would like to. And then 2 years later, they put it out. So and they always ask me to tell people to review it. But to your audience, listen, if you liked it, review it. But if you didn't like it, don't bother.
There you go. You heard
keep it at 5 stars.
So, hey, we'll have the link for that on our YouTube channel at What's Your One More with the number 1. Check that out. It'll be on there along with our show notes, along as information to get in contact. So you want to give us information on how if they want to book you as a guest speaker for their next company event?
Yes.
Let's go for it.
So my website is Janine Stange. I don't know if you're going to
That'll
put
be
it
in the bottom right there on YouTube.
Yeah.
You'll see it'll pop up right now on the screen. She says
here,
it. Yep,
right
absolutely.
And you could just contact. I mean, I speak for all different associations, all different companies. I love realtors. I could speak that language because I understand that the buck stops with you and you have to constantly be motivated. But I mean, healthcare, banking, pretty much any industry. If you need somebody to come and talk, I absolutely. I still obviously love traveling.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you've got a slew of customers that you've spoken for on your website. You can see it all over there. I mean, Fortune 500 companies, list goes on and on. It's a wonderful message. Check out the clips on there. They give you a nice preview of what you talk about. It's a wonderful website. You did a great job. Hats off on that. And I just want to say thanks for spending some time with us on the show today. It was great having you on here.
Thank you so much. And you are doing a great job. And I'm proud of you for what you're doing, taking the time to do this.
Thank you so much for saying that. I appreciate it. Guys, if you like what you're hearing, please 5-star review this podcast on your favorite platform that you listen to your podcasts on, specifically on Apple Review. If you would, leave us a review and then check us out on our YouTube channel at What's Your One More. Thanks for tuning in. Until the next episode, we'll see you at What's Your One More.
I got one more shot, I'm gonna make it. One more chance, I'm gonna take it. I meant it when I said it, now it's time for me to do it. I got one life to live, so I put my all into it, yeah.